What's going on, Team Misfit coaches? Hunter from Misfit Gym Portland coming to you talking about 22.2. We've got warm-up and tips for this workout. We've got 1 up to 10 and then back down to 1 of those deadlifts and bar-facing burpees. For a lot of our athletes, this is going to be a 10-minute AMRAP, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to talk about strategy for how to get those athletes the most reps possible, but it really starts with the warm-up. So when we're thinking about this warm-up, it is super important that we're not only getting blood flow to kind of just the overall full body, but we're also trying to get some synovial fluid and general blood flow into that spinal area. So making sure that we're activating that midline musculature that we need. Otherwise, athletes are going to get, 20, 30 reps into those deadlifts and those backs get really tight and our workout's over too early. So we start with a sweat check, 10 minutes of jogging, assault biking, maybe some combination of the two, but we're looking for 10 minutes of really kind of low intensity movement, slowly elevating the heart rate, starting to circulate blood throughout the entire body. After that, we've got some suggested mobility. We'll get down to like personal mobility here in a minute, but the suggested mobility, a couch stretch or some sort of banded distraction just to open up the hips a little. We don't want to overemphasize that static stretching. We do too much static stretching. We lose some of the stretch reflex and the elasticity in muscles, but we want to loosen that stuff up. Afterward, we've got some activation drills. We're going to come back to these. Coach Sherb is going to help everybody out with exactly how to execute these, combination of psoas activators and bird dogs, and then some banded good mornings to get the posterior chain involved. So for these, not looking for the thickest band athletes have in the gym, more about having a light band, nice and controlled on the way down, and then emphasizing that hip extension standing up. Afterward, that's when we go into that personal mobility for folks who need maybe a little bit extra to loosen up the hips, the low back. If you have a reverse hyper at your gym, getting athletes on that for somewhere between 10 and 20 reps with a really light weight. You can also kind of reverse engineer that using a GHD. And you can look up some videos on YouTube for how that reverse hyper movement works. Okay, then we get into our primer. So again, the purpose of that primer is to jack the heart rate up so that athletes aren't getting kind of punched in the face in round 6 of this workout. We've got 2 rounds, 150-meter ski, 5 bar-facing burpees, and that should be a pretty high intensity, probably much faster than athletes are going to pace the actual workout. Skiing's recommended to get some of that closing of the hip and kind of hip hinging motion. If you don't have a ski erg, rowing is perfectly fine. After that, we get athletes warming up their deadlift. For athletes who are a little bit nervous about the weight on this workout, we'd say it's perfectly fine for athletes to maybe pull a couple of reps that are a little bit heavier than workout weight so that they feel better when they strip that bar down to workout weight and start moving through. Now, going into kind of movement tips, we'll start with the deadlift. Again, most of these athletes, it's going to be a 10-minute AMRAP as far as we can get. It's perfectly fine to break those deadlifts up early and is not a bad strategy, okay? If we're doing that though, setting up for those reps, once we set the bar down, making sure we regain that good sound setup position that we talk to you guys all the time about is absolutely critical. Athletes pull some really poor deadlifts up front, their workout is gonna hurt a lot more a few minutes later. For the burpees, steady burpees, good strategy, okay? Stepping back, stepping up is perfectly fine. What we want to make sure we avoid is athletes getting into that worm or kind of that press up position, that's almost like a seal or cobra pose, overextending in the low back. When we combine that with a hinging movement is a recipe for athletes' backs to get really tight and end their workout again too early. And that's the overextend portion. Then after that workout is done, regardless of how those athletes do, we need to cool down, especially like with a workout like this where there's so much demand both kind of on in that spinal column. We need to cool down. We need to tell the body that we're going back into that rest and digest mode. So walking if you got an air runner, if it's a nice where you live outside, good on you. It's only about 10 degrees here. Walk outside, just get some movement, bring that heart rate back down, and then do some additional mobility, especially if athletes think they might want to retest this come Sunday or Monday. That starts immediately once this workout ends. So that's our warm-up. Those are our tips. Again, now we're going to go over to Sherb, Coach Sherb here. We're going to talk about these psoas activators and bird dogs. This is a really, really effective midline activation drill. So the psoas activators, Sherb's got one of these little mini glute activation bands. Resistance doesn't need to be a ton. Instead, we're gonna have the athlete roll onto their back, kind of get into a 90-90 position, hips and knees. From here, the athlete's gonna pull one knee up nice and high to their chest and then push away with the opposite foot, a brief pause, and then the opposite side. Where athletes are gonna feel this is whichever knee is up here, they're gonna feel that on that side, kind of in that psoas, that low back, deep in their stomach, in their gut area, okay? And again, we're turning on the musculature that's around the spine, preparing it to undertake a load kind of with that deadlift. The second drill here is the bird dog. So we're gonna kind of be in the opposite position here in a tabletop. And what we wanna emphasize is that the athletes are not gonna overextend at the low back. So Sherb kind of puffs his chest up, arches his back. That's no bueno. We don't ever want to be in that position. Instead, we're going to have him tuck the rib cage in and kind of really get in a solid position here. From there, athletes are going to touch the elbow to the knee and then reach out overhead. So opposite arm, opposite leg, and we're going to really emphasize that once they touch that knee, they're lifting the leg with their glute and their hamstrings, not exclusively with their low back. We touch, elevate, and we're going back and forth for 20 reps, 10 on each side. So there you have it, 22.2 warm-up and tips. Get your athletes really warm, re-emphasize the points of performance on the deadlift, because this is, for a lot of your affiliate athletes, going to be a deadlift workout. We want to make sure they're not only safe, but we're setting them up for the most success we can possibly have in 22.2. Give it a shot. We'll see you guys on the leaderboard.